I just want to tell you, nothing is impossible. That there are many philosophies that I don't believe in. One of them is failure. I don't believe in failure. But to myself, I said, God bless the one who gave an advice.
God bless the one who gives an advice. In his mother language, there is an Iranian proverb says, cast your bread in the water and God will bless you 100 times more. Cast your bread, it means if you do good things for the sake of God, for the sake of humanity, with no strings attached to it, God will reward you 100 times more. By recalling his great story, one of the greatest insurance stories ever told. This is what we aim to do in Bliss and what we aspire to achieve, to cast our bread, to give advice, hope, encouragement, inspiration, and offer persuasive evidence that with time and diligent effort, you too can achieve great heights. Work, 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 and work. No matter how slice it, you have to work. Give first, talk small, and think big. And contact me for help with doing the right thing. Love what you do and keep preaching. This is Mehdi words, and those Mehdi shortened road to success. Mehdi was one of the most successful insurance sales agents in history. He achieved his success despite starting out with a poor, limited grasp of the English language and American customs. He made it to the top of his profession and became famous throughout the world, with having fans in over 40 countries. Mehdi was not only a top salesman in MetLife and one of the top life insurance salesmen in the world, but also a true champion as a human being, consistently honest and always concerned and interested in the next fellow. Has the ability to empathize and sympathize. He was master judge of a human nature and the human relations. He was a very modest man with a great empathy. The book, his book, Nothing is Impossible, is on his life and his sales method. Captured the unbeatable spirit of a remarkable individual who rose the top against the greatest odds. First, let's remember Mehdi in this short video and get inspired.
I'm told that I'm the highest paid man with Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. They say that I make more. Even if it is a lie, it is a good feeling. Is that true? For a man like me, who doesn't know any English, who doesn't know anybody, would be in such a status? Making that kind of money, being in that position, I can assure you, it is not easy. No matter how you slice it, You got to work and work and work. Nothing can replace the work. As a matter of fact, in Iran, we say, باد آورده را باد میبرد. They think that you get easy. It goes out of your hand easily. But when you work for it, then you will appreciate it. Also, we say, کار نیکو کردن است، پر کردن است, which means practice makes it perfect. When you do practice on everything, it makes you perfect to do it. Repeat. We also say, ترک عادت موجب مرض است, which means when you get used, when you are in a habit of doing something, if you don't do it, you will get sick. I'm positively sure that you will agree with me that when we were a kid, we never wanted to take a bath or brush our teeth. They made us to do so. But right now, it is a habit for us. If we don't do it, we get sick. Isn't that true? Isn't that true about our business? Isn't that the way that we should do the business? The way that actually we look, our job is to see people. I always say the best job is created. This is our job. We have just to go and talk to people and make money. Isn't that beautiful? I always say that if you ask my family, what is Mehdi's hobby? They say to be with people because I love people. Now I go to one man, I spend 1 or 2 hours with him. I enjoy myself. I have a happy life. I have a great time. And in the meantime, I made $5,000. Is that too bad? Is it bad?
You are mute.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Me sticking control.
Yeah.
So I was saying that the book, it's called The Greatest Insurance Stories Ever Told. And if they ever wrote a part 2 to that book, then the gifts that we have today will definitely be in it. You'd read their stories, you'd get inspired by their successes, and you'd be guided by everything that you need to know to take the path to success in our profession and to rise and overcome difficulties. They're 4 of the biggest names in the life insurance profession. And they're gathered here today with us at the Bliss webinar to honor the legend, Mehdi Fakharzadeh. They knew him. They had heard him speak. They may have even worked with him from time to time or inspired by him. His personality, his humility, his wisdom, his positive power, and the great story that he lived and left behind. Join me to welcome our gentleman from the United Kingdom, my mentor and friend, Tony Gordon. From the USA, my friend, Mr. Joe Jordan. From Ireland, Mr. Ted Dwyer. And from Canada, Mr. Alfonso Franco. They too are famous, and they don't need real introduction. Many of us know them. So what I'm going to do is I'll let each of our guests introduce himself and tell us when and how he got to know Mr. Fakharzadeh for the first time. So maybe, Tony, we'll start with you. Don't forget to unmute, like I did. There you go.
how did I first meet Mehdi? Well, I heard Mehdi speak at MDRT, and a couple of years later, the MDRT annual meeting was coming up, and somebody had a great idea. They said, we're going to do something on the main platform at MDRT, and it's going to be in an American football. The meeting was in San Francisco. It's going to be in an American football team's changing room. So we want you to get in a couple of days early. And it took a couple of days to film this. And the idea was there would be a scene in the locker room where the coach was lecturing to the players, and there were 4 players plus the coach, and they invited me to be one of the players. It was a couple of years, 2 years after my inaugural speech at MDRT, which is where I was sort of thrust onto the MDRT stage. And one of the other speakers was Mehdi. And what they would do is we all had some script that had been written that sort of was about football, but strange kind of football, because it was American football, which to me is a very strange game. We'd all have some kind of script, and then there'd be a line which said something like, well, you know, this is a move. No, but this is a sales idea. And on the screen, each day, one of the speakers would run towards the exit to the pitch and run onto the stage live in the same gear, dressed up as the American footballer, deliver a 3-4 minute sales idea, right? Okay, and that was it. And we did one, there was a segment each day for 4 days. And Mehdi was one of the 4 speakers. In fact, thinking about it, I'm the only one still alive. which is not very encouraging, or maybe it is encouraging, but Sidney Freeman, Freddie Donaldson, Mehdi, myself, and a guy called Alan Press, who was very involved in the Agents Association in the US. He was the coach. And Mehdi could never remember his lines. And that's what I remember more than anything else. And, you know, the big worry, once he runs out onto the stage, will we ever get him off the stage? He was the warmest, most delightful man. I know especially Americans throw the word love around almost, you know, in the UK, we're much more reserved. We might say, you know, I really like you. In America, they'll say, I love you, man. Okay, I loved him like a father figure. He encouraged me, he mentored me. I remember him actually saying to me on one occasion, I hope I live long enough to see you as the president of MDRT. And this was long before I would even have had the nerve to dream that one day I might be the president of MDRT. He had such great faith, and it was reciprocated by me in the respect that I had for him. And I have more memories than that, but you let other people speak, and your question was, how did I first meet him? I met him in the locker room. It was actually filmed genuinely in a football club's locker room. And that's where I first met him. So that's from there, the relationship, the friendship grew from that.
Well, Tony, having known you for so long, when you speak so highly of someone, I know that you must have respected him a whole lot. And hopefully that you'll have a long life like he did, and even longer, I hope. And
Thank
you'll
you.
stay around and keep mentoring us.
You know, my respect for Mehdi did not come from the fact that he was a great salesman. It didn't even come from the fact that I enjoyed hearing him speak. It came from his spirit and his desire to share success and encourage other people to believe that they too could succeed. And that's something we both have in common. I started with all kinds of, let's say, things are going against my potential success. So did Mehdi, as you said in your introduction. And it was that desire to see other people succeed that so much warmed me to him.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Joe, can you share with us?
You're muted, Joe.
I just figured out how to do it, you know. No, Mehdi was a powerhouse. I came to MetLife in 1988, and I wasn't terribly familiar with who Mehdi was until I saw him, and he was just simply awesome. And I saw all the people follow him, and I would listen to him speak, and you could hear a pin drop, you know. I thought he was. I shared a lot of stages with him, and of course he was incomparable, and he would touch people's soul, you know, he really would, and he would inspire people. But the best feeling I had for Mehdi is when we were overseas, you know. You could just see people saying, look at this guy, you know, and you know, he wasn't the best looking guy in the world. He wasn't big and strapping and strong, but powerful in his voice. And I think the thing that I most think that was impactful about Mehdi was, for the millions of agents, he must have spoken to millions, okay? I've been with him when there's 20,000 people in the audience someplace in Asia. Some of them left saying, if he can do that, I can do it. And that's where I think his biggest inspiration came, because they looked at this guy, he wasn't a big dude, he was, you know, and he spoke kind of funny. And he went to the US and he made this stuff happen. And they would say, you know what, maybe I can do it too. And so I think that's his biggest influence. I called him the moving Statue of Liberty. You know, you see a lot of movies where people are coming into New York Harbor for the first time and they look from the dreams of the Statue of Liberty. That's what he was. He was portable. So he would be out there and people would be inspired and would come to him. So it must have been millions of reps. And it's certainly probably tens of millions of people whose lives they affected, because if he inspired someone in the audience, some of those people went out and sold insurance to people who really needed it. And that's what he did. And very humble about it. And I really think that he was somebody of great character. And it was always great to be around him. And, you know, so that's kind of how I met him. I would tell you a story. Of course, he was also funny, you know. He always talked about his wife, Sigrid, you know. She was a stunning looking woman. She came from Iceland, you know. So here's this guy, curmudgeon type guy, you know, going to try to introduce himself to her. And so he really pursued her heavily. So it just gives you an idea of how persistent he was, okay? And he tells the story, you know how he talked, you know. And he said, I wanted to marry her. And you know what? Sigrid's parents were against it. My parents were against it. Sigrid was against it, you know. And yet he would just continue to persist. And that was the thing that was there. And so I think he was a shining ray of hope to people sitting in an audience, wondering what they were going to do, why they were in this business. And they heard this funny guy get up and talk and inspired them, and they went out and saved other people's lives. That's my biggest feel for him. And the last part is we were in Santorini, which is off of Greece, and there's this hill which you cannot believe. It's like straight up, you know. And so they either you go up on a donkey or one of those, you know, chairlifts. Mehdi's well into his 80s, almost ran up it. So he was physically fit to the end, mentally fit, and was just a great guy. So those are my stories.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you. You know, you brought up Santorini. I remember when I saw him speak for the first time in Greece, in Athens. It was me and Naj who were there. And I think the one thing that he left me with is that he at the time was probably around, I don't know, 87 years old. And he was still working. You know, it was just so inspiring. And it's like, you know, we never have to quit. We can do this as long as we want to, which is
Right.
amazing.
Right.
Anyways, thanks, Joe. Alfonso, it's good to see you.
Yourself, please.
You need to unmute. Can't hear you.
You need to unmute.
Yes,
Alfonso.
yes. Can you
Okay,
hear me
there
now?
you go. There you go. Yes.
I was waiting for
So, Alfonso,
Tony to guide me.
You know, isn't it?
yeah.
You know, isn't it great? You know, we don't need to know how this stuff works in order to
Yes.
sell an awful lot of life insurance.
Yes.
In order to be successful, we
Thank-
don't need to know how it works.
Thank goodness. Anyways, Alfonso, maybe you can tell us your experience with Mehdi. I know that you've known him for quite a while as well.
Yeah, I met Mehdi, had the privilege of meeting Mehdi whilst I was the Rookie of the Year 35 years ago for MetLife Canada. The US, they invited me to the US to head office in New York, and Mehdi was already a legend. We invited to meet some big producers, which included Mehdi, obviously. So my relationship with him progressed, where it became like a father and a son relationship. I had a unique privilege of not only being his friend and close to him, but on travels throughout the world, I became by default his bodyguard, making sure that the hordes of folks that would come in and line up, he would never say no to anybody. Tony will remember this. And the people taking pictures, and he could hardly breathe. In Taipei one time, 12,000 people lined up. We left the premises around 10:30 at night. We couldn't even leave the arena. So a lot of people want to take pictures and so on. But Mehdi was always graceful, always accommodating people. And so that's my experience of meeting and being with him. And over the years, we traveled to different countries from Greece to Slovenia to Croatia to Austria to Thailand or to Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, India. Mehdi brought, no matter where he went, what Tony was absolutely right. His love for people was unbelievable, and that came through genuinely. And that's why he cared about people and he connected with people. So those are my memories of Mehdi.
Excellent. Thank you, Alfonso. And now, Ted, I know you had a long relation with Mehdi.
Well, it's going back 40 years ago. I went to my first meeting of the Middle Round Table in 1981. I think it was 81. And it was held in Radio City in New York, which was an incredible theater of 6,000 people. I mean, theater, we have an opera house in Cork, and it holds 1,000 people. This was fantastic, 6,000 people, all financial advisors. It was exhilarating. So I remember listening to Ben Feldman talking at that meeting, and then Mehdi Fakharzadeh spoke at the same meeting. Mehdi, was the most inspirational person that I have ever heard. And I remember a story he told us at that first meeting. He had obviously very little English, he said, at the time, but he had a very good, positive attitude. And he told us that he had recently made a presentation to a firm of lawyers in New York. And he said it was for a significant amount of life insurance cover. He put the proposal to them on a one-page presentation, and the lawyers said to him, Mehdi, this is wonderful. We can understand your proposal. It's so simple. We've had 4 other proposals, and the smallest of them is 25 pages long. We don't know what they're talking about. Mehdi, we are going to give you the business because we understand what you are saying. And afterwards, the lawyers asked Mehdi how had he kept his proposal so simple. And Mehdi said, it was very simple. His English wasn't good enough to make it complicated. And that got a good laugh. As well as a positive attitude, Mehdi had a wonderful sense of humor that endeared him to everyone. And what triggered basically my ongoing business relationship with Mehdi is that Mehdi then started to talk about a plan he had developed for company owners. And this to me was very exciting because I come from a family business background. My family have been in business in Cork, in various businesses for over 200 years. And when I got back to Cork, I never met Mehdi at that meeting, but I wrote to him and I asked him if he would come to visit us in Ireland to speak at our annual LIA convention in Dublin. And Mehdi agreed to do that, and he came to visit us 2 years later. And so I'll tell you a little bit more maybe later on, but it was actually when he came, he flew into Shannon Airport 2 years later. That was the first time I actually met him. And he changed my business life forever. So I'm so pleased and honored to be part of this tribute to the great Mehdi Fakharzadeh.
Excellent, Ted. Thank you, Ted. And you were telling us a nice story. What about to watch this story from Mehdi? Guys, can we put the video, please?
I remember about 3 years ago, I made a proposal to 4 lawyers. They read it. They said, Mehdi, it is so simple. It is so beautiful. It is so understanding. Do you know that some of these agents bring us some proposal for 10, 15 pages, and we have to read it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and still we have some questions? Yours was so simple. How did you make it so simple? I said, the reason mine is so simple because I don't know enough English to make it complicated.
I didn't know you had that. Well done. That's 40 years ago.
Yes.
Wow.
Well done, lads. Well done. Well done.
You know, the way that all of you speak about him, when you go back in your memory and you think about him, you can feel that he's, you know, he's had a big impact on each and every one of you in some way. So I think, I mean, you know, what's the best for each of you? Maybe we'll go back and start with you, Tony. What's maybe the best career advice that you've ever received from him? And, you know, and how maybe did it impact your career, if at all?
I don't think I received any career advice from Mehdi. He was one of those people who I think made me a better person from the example that he set. Because when I first met him, as I said, in 1985, I was really just beginning to be really successful. I'd made top of the table about 5 or maybe 6 times, you know, and what happens is your income goes up and you want people to know how successful you are. You become a little obnoxious before you become nice again. And so did he ever give me sales advice, career advice? No. Did he help make me a better person by demonstrating that if you want to be loved and you're truly successful, be humble. People will aspire greatness to you. You don't have to claim it for yourself. And that probably is, if I learned anything from Mehdi, it was that. But I would have conversations with Mehdi. You know, Mehdi was a very successful, very clever man for a long time. And he used to invest in farmland. And I remember being with him somewhere, we were speaking, and I said, you know, I'm going to retire now. I've sold my business, I'm going to retire. He said, well, what have you invested in? And I said, well, like you, I've invested in real estate. And he said, well, what are you going to live on if you retire? And I said, well, my real estate pays rent. Because I'd asked him, why he invested in farmland. And he'd always said, because the cities, he bought farms close to the cities, because eventually the cities will expand, and it was a great long-term investment. But it paid no rent, or very little rent. So we would talk about that. I remember one night, winter's night, he and I were speaking in Hungary, in Budapest, and we'd had our dinner, and you know, everybody else had gone off to bed, and we were both jet lagged and wanted some fresh air, and it was snowing. And he and I walked around Budapest at night in the snow coming down. It was so picturesque. He knew nothing really about the history of that part of Europe. We walked around, if you know Budapest, we walked around their parliament building, which is a beautiful building. It's the building that is in every brochure for tours, river tours in Europe. We walk around, and we walked where the monument is, the shoes, the bronze shoes that are set into the pavement, which is from where they threw people, the Nazis threw people into the river and then took pot shots at them. It's a monument, and we talked about this, and we talked about life in general. So what did I learn from Mehdi? I learned how to be a better person from his example. He never lectured, but his example was fantastic. I remember he had this wonderful expression. He said, "Blessed is the one who gives advice, but 1,000 times blessed is the one who takes the advice." I'll tell you a little story. He told me that, and I have a vacation home in Italy, and there's a little village, very picturesque little village closest to our home, and we've become friendly with a few people who live there. And one of these is a young woman, and she's a ceramic artist. She makes things out of clay, and she speaks quite good English, because my Italian's hopeless. And one day got to know her, so she started asking me questions about what she should do in business. And so I gave her some advice, and I said, you know, listen, don't thank me for the advice. There's an old Iranian friend of mine who says, "Blessed is the one who gives advice, but 1,000 times blessed is the one who takes the advice." And about a year later, talking to her again, and she took me upstairs to the studio where she actually makes the stuff, above the showroom. And there, pinned up, she'd pinned this sign up above her desk where she works, right? "Blessed is the one who gives advice, and 1,000 times blessed is the one who takes the advice." And it is amazing that the words and the care and the sharing of one person can actually affect somebody thousands of miles away, nothing to do with the life insurance business. It's just the way the message and what it means spread. And he was very amused when I told him about it. So, you know, we can go on forever with Mehdiisms. He was just, so what did I learn? I'm sorry, your question was, I'll shut up. The question was, what have I learned from I would say I've learned to be a better person. That greatness is not something we can claim for ourselves, even if we are great. However successful we are, it will be recognized if we're real and genuine.
Wow.
So that's what.
Yeah, wow. Seems you learned a lot from him.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Joe, the question is for you. Success is a destination or a journey? How does Mehdi define success, and how you define it?
Well, he had very much a program that. Oh, am I on? No, I'm not on mute. Okay. He really helped me more of the business aspect of it. You know, it's always a journey. It's not a destination. You know, when you arrive, you know, arriving means you're no longer thriving. So that's something that I go by. But the core of the business was this, and he always implanted it. And it's see the people. You might have seen it in the clip that was played. He said, "See the people." And a lot of times that gets obscured. And I know what Tony's talking about is you go through a cycle where you're dumb and then you get real smart and then you get dumb again, you know? And so that's where he was. And I heard him say it many times. I mean, I think the business is built on tools, okay? Prospecting and everything else, you know? And that's not a joke, because every meeting you go to, the reason you're there is everyone assumes you're in front of somebody. And that's precisely what Mehdi did. He didn't give the best presentations in the world, and he did, you know, that he was just in front of an awful lot of people. And so the thing I learned from him is this, is that if you continue to prospect and you continue to see people, your success is inevitable. If you stop, you die. So, you know, you can always do, you can always learn by doing, but you can never do by learning. And so sometimes we get off into this thing of, you know, trying to know all this stuff or be really sophisticated or what have you. I mean, the story he said he didn't know enough English to make it complicated really resonates. And so that's the thing that I think was the biggest impact on me was it's the little things, it's the small things. It's actually the biggest thing. And when people stop prospecting, they die. And you just have to have a powerful image of what you do for others. And I think that's something that I really have. It helped to formulate my whole latter part of my career in terms of focusing on what's important. So that's the thing I think. He brought out the DNA of the business, and he lived it. And you know, absent that, I don't think there's a bigger lesson to be learned.
Thanks, Joe. Well said. Alfonso, you're the younger one among us. And it seems you spent a lot of time with him, and it seems that he looks younger. And that you've spent so much time with him, almost being his bodyguard, that you might be able to share a lot about how Mehdi, you know, influenced you as a person and your career. You know, maybe you could describe the relationship that you had with Mehdi. And I mean, he taught you about being a true gentleman and faith-based selling. Maybe you could tell us some of those, or share with us some of those ideas and stories.
You know, there are a plethora of different stories. People on the panel will remember Mehdi for a wise man that he was. In early 2003, Mehdi, along with Jimmy Jacobs, Howard Catchings, and myself, were rehearsing in Chicago for the MDRT main platform, because we've been speaking there in Las Vegas in 2003. So the committee made up of Brian Heck, Joanne Favia, Luther Pierce, and John were on the main platform committee, and they were instructing us to do a video first, which is like a couple of minutes long, with a Hollywood actor, and then we appear on stage. It's actually what happened with Tony earlier, a number of years ago. This was in 2003, and then the time they had allotted to Mehdi was 2 minutes, and they were having a difficult time trying to understand why Mehdi could not comply with 2 minutes. So I got seconded to go and be the peacemaker and try to get him on board. So when I said, Mehdi, they want you to speak, and he said, how much time? I said, 2 minutes is what they're giving. He said, for heaven's sake, he said, you know how Tony remembers this, he probably said, for heaven's sake, when he sees somebody, I mean, surprised with somebody, he said, I can't even get my last name in 2 minutes, let alone a speech. So when we got to the site in Vegas, they still had difficulty, and Mehdi had a problem. His granddaughter was graduating, and she was giving a speech on Mehdi's achievements. So he had to get going. So he spoke on the first night, and the committee was on the edge of the chairs. How long is it going to take? I think finally they gave him about 3.5 minutes, and he did a fantastic job. And the very next morning, he took off back to New Jersey. So there are various stories of Mehdi, you know, but that one stands out because he said, I can't get even my last name in 2 minutes. So that was a memory to be cherished. And as far as him having an impact, I think I'm with Tony on that. It's not so much career advice. He always said, you know, you have to study well, prepare well and love what you do, and the rest will follow. But more than that was how he lived this life, the caring that he had for people, the love he had for people, no matter what background they were from, what religion they were from, or whatever their ethnicity was. Mehdi genuinely loved people, and that cannot be put on by anybody unless it actually comes from the heart, and that's what it was. Mehdi was a beautiful soul, and the thing, what came out of him was pure good, and you can see that he loved human beings. It was from his soul. That's not from his head or whatever. It was from his soul, from his heart. The love was genuine.
Well, it's hard to find that these days.
Yes.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Ted, you were telling us about the first time he came to Ireland after you wrote to him, and he came after 2 years. Can you tell us about the story, the first time you met him? And at the same time, about the Mehdi plan for in Ireland. Or as Mehdi say always the hot cake. So how does it affect you and your business at the same time?
Well, yeah, I mean, that actually, as far as I can remember, was the first time I met him. He came off the plane in Shannon Airport, himself and his wife, Sigrun, who, as you say, is from Iceland, and she went to Iceland on the way over. And so they both came then, and Mehdi spoke to the LIA in Dublin, which was absolutely wonderful. He came down to Cork then, where I got him to meet some financial advisors in a question and answer session. And then finally, I said to him, because he was getting tired at this stage, I said, Mehdi, I have one call I want you to do with me. I want you to come and visit a client of mine to see if we could interest him in one of those wonderful Mehdi plans that you were talking about at the MDRT meeting 2 years ago. And I suppose I've always believed in the principle that we should put ourselves in danger of doing business. And what an opportunity for me to go to a business meeting with one of my clients, with one of the greatest life insurance salespeople ever. And so the meeting was arranged with my client Donald, who owned a family business in Cork, and it was an amazing learning experience for me. I put the figures together, and the Mehdi plan was basically a wonderful old-fashioned whole of life with profits plan with a basic sum insured of about €300,000. The commission, the annual premium was close to €7,000, and the commission payable at that time was about 90% of the annual premium, which is probably in today's term, it's considerable. It's probably, I think it was 90% of 7,000 then, so I think that worked out about 20,000 today. The surrender value was small in the early years because of the commission payable, and after 10 years it got better and better, and the amount payable on death obviously increased every year as the sum insured, as the profits added on to the basic sum insured. So Mehdi was in charge of the meeting, and he began by saying there, Naji, what you were saying. He said to Donald that the Mehdi plan he was showing him that was selling like hotcakes in America. And so Mehdi explained how the plan was not going to cost Donald anything, as it would be his company that would be paying for the benefits for himself and his wife. He explained that God forbid if anything were to happen to Donald in the early years, then the sum insured of 300,000 plus bonuses would be paid to his company. In addition, he showed Donald that when he got to retirement age, the estimated cash value would be immediately, the estimated cash value would be used to pay a substantial income to Donald for at least 10 years. And then he explained to Donald that the building cash fund in the company's name would be immediately available to his company should trading prove difficult at any time. And he also said that the cash value, if he was ever having difficulty with his bank, he would have immediate access to all the money in the company plan. So anyway, Mehdi had said to me in the car on the way to the meeting that when he had finished explaining the benefits to Donald, that there might be a silence, and while he was digesting the information. And that silence, he explained, was very important and powerful. And he suggested for me not to talk at this stage, because he said this part of the meeting was a very important part of the implied consent that the business would go ahead. happened next was magical. Mehdi, after a quiet few minutes when the meeting was finishing, he said, "Ted, would you complete the application form with Donald?" I couldn't believe it that the business was actually going to happen, and I took the application form out of my pocket. And of course, Donald then said these awful words that we always hear at meetings, "I want to think about it first." It wasn't a refusal, it was simply a delaying tactic. And that's where Mehdi was masterful in his words. And he said, "Donald, of course you must think about it, and that is the right thing to do. In fact, I want you over the next week or so to write down all the questions that come to mind and pass these to Ted, who will answer them for you. And if necessary, he will contact me. Is that fair?" And Donald agreed. And then Mehdi said some more powerful words. He said, "Donald, just now though, there really isn't too much to think about, as we don't know if the insurance company will give you the cover. So we don't know if we can get one of these plans for you. What we need to do is to get the application into the company, get the medical arranged, and as there is a fair bit amount of life insurance cover involved. And then if and when Ted comes back to you with the offer of cover, you will decide then whether you want it or not. Is that okay?" And Donald agreed. And so we completed the application form, arranged the medical, and about 5 weeks later, I called back to Donald and he accepted the terms, which were slightly loaded for high blood pressure. And so the first Mehdi plan in Ireland was put in force. Thank you, Mehdi. Mehdi, just to get a case completed, would have lost me gone, but no, Mehdi, he was just the most wonderful person off a case. Get the application, get the medical. If you get that done, Ben Feldman was the same. You've got to get it, move it forward. And then it'll probably happen. Thank you.
You need to unmute yourself. Sorry, unmute yourself, Freddie.
Thank you, Ted. Those are simple but
Okay.
powerful words. We just need to remember to use them.
Okay.
Tony?
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't know Mehdi and he never heard about him, never read his books, how would you explain the importance and the added value of the Mehdi story or of his story?
Well, I think he was the perfect example of somebody who was so determined to succeed that he overcame all difficulty. And you could actually tell a story to somebody who was not at all involved in our business, because it's a universal story. That here was somebody who had come from a poor background. He came actually from quite a wealthy background. He was sent to America to finish his studies. But it was a very old-fashioned Persian background. He was the youngest of 25 children, believe it or not. And he was sent to finish his studies, but his English, even in his 90s, he hadn't learned in however many 65 years in America. He'd never really learned to speak English very well. He'd certainly learned to express himself, and you certainly understood what he was saying to you. But he'd never lost a very, very heavy immigrant accent. In some ways, you really reminded me of my paternal grandfather, who throughout his life, he came from Lithuania to England when he was 19 years of age. And throughout his life, he could never speak perfect English. He was always heavily accented. So Mehdi was the perfect example of somebody who, despite the disadvantages, was intelligent enough to understand that what you have to do to succeed is not complicated. It is actually simple. And whether I can speak perfect English or not the business is not about speaking perfect English. The business is about seeing enough people and asking them to do business. That's what the business is about. So whether you have two heads or one, you know, whatever your faith, whatever your background, if you understand the simple basics of the business and then you believe in yourself. Mehdi had the belief that he could achieve. You know, the book was called, what the book he wrote was called Nothing is Impossible. And it's true, nothing is impossible if we have enough self-belief and if we understand what makes the business work. Now, you could ask anybody in our business, you know, what do you have to do to succeed? And they know you're supposed to see people, right? But they don't necessarily do it. And Mehdi had the self-discipline, the factor which above all other factors, particularly when added to self-belief, is determinant of our success. You know, how lucky we are to be in a profession where self-belief alone will bring success. Self-belief with self-discipline adds up to success. And Mehdi just figured this out. It's not complicated. The product's complicated. The guy who sits in the home office somewhere, the actuary designing the product, you know, he's got to be educated because that's a complicated job. But actually persuading people that this is something they need and can benefit them, it's actually a very, very simple formula. And the more successful you become and the more complex the cases you get involved with does not actually make the job more complicated. The job remains just as simple, only the zeros on the end of the premium, and I'm pleased to say on the end of the commission, get bigger, get more frequent. So I don't know if that's answering your question, Fred, but I think that,
yes.
You know, there was so much about the man that could be an example. We've talked about his humility, we've talked about his humanity, we've talked about how he rose from humble beginnings, got over the disadvantages that he had, but he didn't see them as disadvantages. He just understood the simplicity of achieving success. It's seeing enough people. And as he started to achieve success, like everybody else, he would never have believed how far his success would take him, but he never stopped believing that he could do better and better and better. But he always kept it simple. He was, in fact, a simple person.
Simple. Wow. Discipline.
You know, it's interesting.
Hungry.
It's interesting, something that Joe said earlier, and I think that I referred to. I was thinking about this the other day. I remember being told donkeys years ago that there were 3 stages to a life insurance advisor's career. The first was starry-eyed enthusiasm, where if we make some sales, we don't really know what we're talking about, but we're so enthusiastic about our new career that our enthusiasm becomes transferred to our prospects, and some of them buy. And then we move to the second stage, which is sophisticated confusion, where we learn something and we feel that we've actually got to tell our prospects how much we know so they'll have confidence in us. So now we've gone from starry-eyed enthusiasm to sophisticated confusion, right? And some people move to the third stage, which is mature simplicity, where we actually understand the complexity of the product, but we realize the best thing to do is not discuss the complexity of the product unless we're trying to do business with an actor, to keep it very, very simple. And I don't know if Mehdi ever went through that middle stage. Now, there are some people in our business who get stuck in the middle stage and never get to mature simplicity, right? But I think Mehdi probably went from starry-eyed enthusiasm straight to mature simplicity. Maybe not, you know, maybe, listen, he was around a long time. Maybe somewhere he got into that middle stage, but realized very quickly the key to success is to move on from there as quickly as possible.
Mature simplicity, amazing words.
Yeah, so there you go.
So simple, it's so simple.
The 3 stages, you know, listen, I know everybody else here who's on this call Ted, I think I've probably known the longest of these people. You know, Ted epitomizes mature simplicity. You know, if the client does this and this and this, then the client will be better off. You know, it's as simple as that. I'm sure Alfonso the same, and Joe. And that was Mehdi. That was Mehdi.
Thanks, Tony. Joe, since you were with MetLife for a long time, and Mehdi was MetLife, what do you think distinguished Mehdi apart from other top agents or giants in the life insurance profession? If you knew him that well enough to tell us.
Well, I think a lot of people covered some of it, you know, the fundamentals and the basics and the fact that he made things simple. But I also think he is a great example of our business, you know, and that's also a great example of MDRT, the diversity, despite the fact that people are different. The fact of the matter is we do kind of the same thing. I don't know too many industries that allow, and you know, sometimes you don't know what you got till it's gone. How many industries allow people from all over the world to come in, share stuff? No one's sitting there hiding, you know, with the secret sauce. They're doing it. And that's where I think Mehdi, you know, represented that. Here's this guy who went to America, could hardly speak English, isn't the, you know, the biggest guy in the world or what have you, and there he's out there. And so I think that's one of the things that the world needs is the respect of diversity. It's made the United States great, despite some of the things that people are hearing about it. It ain't true, okay? But this is the big issue. Globally, the biggest issue I think humanity faces is not the stuff people normally talk about. It's the aging population of the world, okay? We got people living into their 80s and 90s, and that means they have to take responsibility. And whenever you sequence people or put them into the thing, Mehdi would never be someone who would think that he's a victim or entitled. And when you tell people that you're a victim and someone owes you something, there's nothing more detrimental. It's the idea of bringing people up that you have to be responsible for yourself. That's what he represented. And that's what the industry represents. And that is what MDRT represents, that it's done on a global basis. So I think he is someone, and you know, you always have to look at the pitons, you know, when they're climbing the mountain, they have to knock the thing in to get up a little bit further. That's what he was. He was a giant piton. If someone could look at that and look at this guy, and that's what he did. And that's the part that inspires them. It gets the blood going. It isn't in the head, it's in the heart. And that's what I think he does. And then on top of that, the conspiracy of good that we do, the fact that people can have a safe retirement, the fact that if someone dies prematurely, that the family can continue, that will always continue. It's difficult because we talk about things that no one wants to talk about, but that's some of the things that I think he really represented. And you know, God bless Mehdi, and God bless this industry, and God bless MDRT and everyone on this call, because you guys are doing the work of the Lord as far as I'm concerned.
Well, thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
It's always amazing to hear you speak.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Fred. And before the time will takes us, let me here say big thanks really for Legacy Builders team, the operation manager Aline Katurji and Noor, and Layla, the event coordinator and the marketing coordinator, for all the job that they're doing for Legacy Builders and Bliss. And sure, the big thanks also for Eli Demian and all his team, and for Jad Dagher, my brother, my friend, next to me all the time, Expand team, and Habib, and sure, the marketing team, the marketing agency that we work with, that they did all the visual Blue Grapes company. And now let me go to a question to you, Alfonso. Could you please share with us the faith-based selling story? What did you learn from it?
Thank you, Naji. In 2001, whilst I was a moderator at the MDRT meeting in Toronto, a question was asked about faith-based selling, and the speakers very gently asked the moderator to answer the question. One of the questions was, how do you market it to people of various faiths? So I answered the question based on marketing to not just the standard faiths. We started off with the Old Testament and the Jewish faith, Christian faith, Islamic faith, Hinduism, and finally Buddhism. from those points of view. The Islamic Sharia-based takaful products is what I had mentioned. And after the talk, my friend Mehdi came to me and wanted me to explain and write to him in detail on my thoughts in this matter. Here I was from a Catholic upbringing, who had grown up for practical purposes of Wahhabi Sunni in a neighborhood of Wahhabi Sunni neighborhood, and so I'd learned a lot, but the Islamic-based insurance concept was still relatively new. So Mehdi, in all humility, wanted to learn from a person who had not been in the business more than 15 years. I learned that day that one never stops learning. Mehdi taught me that by asking and learning with humility was really a mark of an educated person. And I realized what a noted wise Persian gentleman had said years and years ago, that said, which translates into from the cradle to the grave, one must not stop learning. So I learned a huge lesson that day, that one is never old enough to ask a question, never old enough to learn, no matter what. And that's what I learned, a lesson about humility and the desire to learn.
Great, great, Alfonso. Let's go now and watch a small video about Mehdi, talking about complaints versus commitment. Can we put the video, please? Thank you.
When I go all over the country, I hear all kinds of complaints. I'm an old man. I can't do anything. I'm a young man. I can't do anything. I'm in the city, big city, and the competition is so keen because there are so many agents and there are so many agencies. The one who's in a small city, he said, well, this is a small city. I don't have any prospect. The one who is big, is with big company, he said, our company is so big. They don't pay attention to any service. They don't pay attention to any agent. The one who is the smallest company, he said, nobody knows our company. Then they blame on what? On inflation. White FTC report, not knowing people, not knowing sophisticated planning. So let me ask you people, what is it? To me, all these things that I mentioned, they are rationalization. Being old, being young, being female, unemployment, inflation, big cities, small cities. No, sir, no, man. We don't have the commitment.
You guys, and now let me ask Ted. Ted, after knowing Mehdi, and also in what you did in Ireland, you were able to instigate a change in the way of financial advisors in Ireland, were remunerated from initial commission on savings and pension policies to a fund-based trail of commission. Would you please explain to us this achievement, its importance, and how you were able to achieve it?
Thank you, Naji. Yeah, I mean, at that stage in Ireland, the commission type was basically based on the sum insured. So if somebody invested €5,000 with you, you got a 3% commission at the start, and you didn't get anything, even if the investment grew to 100,000 and stayed in force for 30 years, you didn't get anything further. If you did a savings policy, you got a percentage of the first premium, maybe 40 or 50%, and then you got a commission of maybe 2.5% of the annual premium every year. And the result of that system was that us, the agents, the broker, we were getting all the flack from our policyholders because they were looking at their values in the first and second year, and they were saying, "Where's all my money gone?" So basically, it was a big issue for me. And I remember speaking at the LIA meeting in Birmingham, the UK meeting, and talking about this over in at MDRT as well. Sorry, I just understood that there. So anyway, I was doing at that stage, I was doing some considerable, quite large. There was a property developer in Cork.
We apologize for the technical problem. If you can hear us, we just need almost 1 minute and we'll be back. We're sorry about this.
I am hearing you now.
Yeah, I can, of course, that, yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
thank
yeah.
you, thank you.
So we should all thank Mehdi, it seems, for the trail commission. But
Yeah.
Naji, I was looking at these questions. There's one I really like, and I really want you to ask Tony this question. The second one on your page there. I want to hear what he has to say.
You want me to ask it or you?
I don't know. What do you want? I can ask it.
Yeah, do it. Do it.
I think it has to do with
Or-
you. It says, Tony, can you hear us, Tony?
Sure.
It says, he's got it this way. It says, Mr. Gordon, going back to many years ago, you once told me, you're telling Naji, that he reminds you a lot of Mr. Fakharzadeh. Now, Naji's saying that he knows that we're not here to talk about himself. So besides the poor English that Naji has, can you share with us what is the signature that Mr. Fakharzadeh and which Naji have in common? Besides
the poor English.
Yeah,
Yes.
besides that's it, huh?
I was sure your answer will be like this. I was sure about it.
I think Naji has an enthusiasm and a genuine concern for other people in the business, a desire to share. And so those are things that he has in common. But I think all of us would have those things in common with Mehdi. It's just the rest of us have better English than Naji.
Never saw you lost for words.
That's why I have my brother and partner Fred next to me.
Yeah, Fred does the English, you do the enthusiasm.
Yeah, my English is pretty good. You should see the Arabic though. Alfonso, there's a question as well for you, which has me curious. It's something about the New Delhi incident. And what it showed you. Can you tell us about that?
When Mehdi was about 92 years old, he was invited to speak in New Delhi, India. Mehdi had been to India many a time, booked a ticket and headed to India. When he landed in New Delhi, the immigration authorities told him that he did not have a valid visa. It was a Saturday afternoon. Americans at this particular juncture and a whole bunch of other country folks traveling to India needed a visa. And most of the offices were starting to close. His host was contacted and the host told him there was nothing he could do. It was a late Saturday, offices open on a Monday. His best avenue was to return to New York. Unfortunately, there were no flights for almost 2 or 3 days. And he could not leave the airport. So he waited patiently for that many days in the airport to catch the next flight.
Wow.
Most of us, if not all of us, would be screaming and you'd be using language skills that we never thought we had, but not Mehdi. What he did was he was, because he was so different, he never considered anything to be a negative. So he turned to a positive. He spoke to people at the airport. The staff in the airport became his newfound friends. They looked after him. Just imagine a 92-year-old person taking this in the middle of, in a stride. That was the very essence of the beauty of Mehdi in various ways. He would say, Inshallah, I will take the next flight, is what he told me when I spoke to him on the phone. Mehdi had the knack to make people smile and be kind as he was to them. Merely a reflection of the giant of the human being before them. So that was a reflection of Mehdi coming back from people. That taught me a lesson, and all of us a lesson, that nothing is impossible. He dealt with it in a beautiful way. And the age factor, surely you can understand, is not easy to be traveling and being stuck in an airport and coming back on a return flight each way, 17.5 hours each way, so.
Story. What a story.
Really, I mean, at age 92, I mean, that would take me to another question, Alfonso. I mean, in your opinion, how did Mehdi maintain his body and his mind in such good health until an advanced stage? I mean, at age 92, you know, if you're put in a situation like that, and he's probably there alone, you know.
Yeah.
Did you learn any secret from him that you could share with us?
Absolutely. Mehdi's routine was waking up in the morning. First things first, he did his namaz, which is his prayers. Then he exercised. Only then he would eat healthy food. Mehdi, as you know, was a very slim man, but my friend Andy Lord, the 2002 top of the table chair, once said, watching Mehdi eat, he said, Mehdi can eat 3 or 4 times the amount of food I can eat. Where does he put it? So Mehdi, the secret to Mehdi was he was eating the first 2 or 3 plates with salads. And then he would have a small amount of protein. So he was very disciplined when it came on how he lived his life. He was very conscientious when it came to his health, his beliefs, family, and friendships. The biggest thing for me is that he loved all people, irrespective of where they came from or what their views were. Mehdi always left people feeling unique as he treated you in a unique way. So the lesson for me from him was to get priorities right with faith, family, and one's profession. They all were intertwined and manifested in the love of people that he had. And that to me is one of the lessons that I'll carry for the rest of my life.
Wow.
Wow, lovely,
Naji?
lovely, lovely, lovely. Thank you. And because we're talking about his personality and the way he thinks, here, Joe, the question is for you, and especially because you work as a VP for MetLife and you knew lots of agents all around the world. How did you distinguish Mehdi apart from other top agent or giant in the life insurance profession?
Well, I think, again, as I said, you know, he stuck with the basics. Then he was always, I don't think he ever got to that second phase, Tony, that you were talking about, you know. So I think he was there. The other thing that I think really I learned from him, and it put a gleam in it, and lately it really dawned on me. He was grateful, and he just exuded gratitude all the time, and you would never see him down. And I think part of it was that he always made people feel like they were worth $1 million. You know, he would come up to you and be that, and he would express it. And you know, I think that what happens is when gratitude appears, you know, negativity disappears, and no negative emotion can stand up to gratitude. So I think that was something. And I have to tell you, I only learned that recently. I mean, that's the thing about getting older. You know, someone puts a seed in your head, and then it came out. So I would have to say the biggest difference from him was the gratitude that he expressed to others, which in turn created a positive mental outside attitude, which makes people rare. You know, it doesn't happen that often. And you know, people, I'm happy when I'm sad. Oh, there's the stock market crashed. You know, we have this pandemic and what have you. Throughout that whole thing, he was always grateful for what he had. And one of the things he did, because I recently did this, I write out a gratitude thing, all of the things I should be grateful for. And when you read it and you get that, it puts your mind in a completely different framework. So I think that's up there. The other thing too, he talked about the idea of commitment, you know, and I always love this saying, at breakfast, the chicken's involved, but the pig's committed, okay? So think about it. And the fact of the matter is, he really brought up the idea in terms of commitment, which is the thing that was different. I'm so glad you played that video. I think that's the highlight of his MDRT speech, when he's talking about, I'm in the big city and there's too many agents and there's too much competition, or I'm in the small city and there aren't enough people with money and what have you. You know, there's always something there. I can be too young or I could be too old. You know, an old dog, new tricks just doesn't happen. And I think that's there. I think one other lesson we should glean from this recent crisis that we've in, and embrace what Mehdi talked about is, you know, despite all of this social media, people have never felt more isolated and alone. You know, Yale did a study and found out the more people Facebook, the worse they feel. Why? Nobody tells the truth in it. They always post all this, you know, stuff about everything's wonderful, and everyone knows, you know, that's not true. And it started this whole new thing, FOMO, fear of missing out. And so people are now looking for someone to tell them that they're worthwhile. And so that's why I think, and you notice what Mehdi said, he talked about advice, the person who gives the advice. I think we're heading into the golden age of advice. You know why? People are craving for relationships at this stage of the game. So in order for us to take advantage of this unique opportunity we have, I don't think this virus happened to us. I think it happened for us. You know, I never did this crap, getting on a Zoom thing or what have you, or doing a computer. I never did one of them, and I would have never made the step to do it. the other side of the coin is now all of your clients had to do it. So there's someone on the other end of the phone. So I believe that this is a great opportunity for us. Mehdi is the type of person who could help us get there, I think. And, you know, I do think the idea of being grateful and expressing it to others. We don't do that enough. It's all thing to be great for yourself. You really need to give it to others. And he always did that. What do I deserve the pleasure of being in your company? You know, that's the type of way he would speak all the time, you know. And it was over the top and you knew it, but you felt great about it. So I think that's some of the, when you act that way, it goes inside and it comes out where it belongs.
Wow, thank you, Joe.
You know, guys, we shouldn't forget that Mehdi loved MDRT. And I think he loved MDRT because it stood for what he stood for in trying to share his success and help other people achieve it. Or that's where he learned it from. But he loved MDRT. And he would talk all over the world about MDRT. And if you let that videotape run for a few seconds longer, you would have heard him say, no, sir, no, ma'am, it is you, sir. It is you, ma'am, it is me. It's what we do that will determine our success, not the economy, not the insurance company, and not whatever this week's crisis is. And as Joe just said, not the big city or the small city. It is you, it is me that will determine our success. And Mehdi loved MDRT, and we also have loved and have appreciated MDRT ourselves. And therefore, if there are people listening to this, perhaps the combining factor, the common denominator in what we all have to say about Mehdi actually is not Mehdi himself, it's MDRT. It's just Mehdi was the perfect representative of MDRT, that we believe that if we have grown because of others, we should help others grow because of us. And that Mehdi was the epitome of this sharing attitude that he found, that we've all found at MDRT, that anybody out there who maybe, if we still have anybody watching or listening to this, you will find this at MDRT.
Well said. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I'm sure all of us
absolutely.
will agree.
100%. Freddie, let me interrupt you here. Sorry, because a story came to my mind. And this story, Alfonso, he told me about when you had MDRT Day in, I think in Dubrovnik. And
Yes.
and and he was at age, I think 92, and you went to the mountain and he started walking with you. Can you tell us about this story?
Yes, this was a few years ago. Mehdi was either 91 or 92, and it was walking up a steep hill overlooking Dubrovnik, Croatia. We were on our way to Slovenia, but we spent a few days in Croatia, and then people were surprised as people were walking down. They saw this elderly gentleman without the help of anybody helping him, climbing thousands of stairs without a railing and things like that. So he had no support. He kept going. I said, Mehdi, you sure you want to go? He said, yeah, every 1,000-mile journey begins with a single step. He says, I want to get up there because I want to see the amazing views. And if I don't work at it, I'll never reach the top. So he kept going until we got to the top. It was the most beautiful view overlooking Dubrovnik. And I was so thankful that I had able to experience that with him. The other thing that happened in when we came back to India was Mehdi was 92, like I mentioned, and then when he was speaking, I don't know if you have the video, Naji, but I sent that last night. I'm not too sure if you're able to access it. He was dancing on the stage for an entire minute, and I'd never seen him do that. He was like a young kid, just like on the. He was so excited walking up the hill, similar to that. Here he was in a speech just before he started his speech. He was dancing on stage for an entire minute.
we will play it during the session. Okay, we were working on
Sure.
it. We will play it during the session. So,
Perfect.
Fred, you can go to the other question, please.
Alfonso, I wanted to also ask you, because you know you had that close connection. The issue of family for Mehdi,
Yes.
they want me to ask you what it represents to him, but I want to know, I mean, how was he actually able to reconcile between his work and his family? I mean, if you're the top agent in MetLife, I would imagine that means you got to work a lot.
Yes.
Which gives you less time for family. And now with the age that we're in today, with all the technology, and you have to be on all the time, and if you don't answer, it's like it gets out of control. So how, if he was with us today, what would he say about reconciling work and family and having that balance?
Well, I think Mehdi was from a different school of thought. I asked him, I said, are you going to retire anytime soon? He said, well, I'm a machine that prints money. Why would you want the machine to stop working? And the other time he said, oh, yes, I'm cutting my hours down. I said, oh, I'm glad to hear that. He said, from 7 days a week, I'm down to 6 days a week. And he was in his 90s. So work to him was worship. And so what happened was, see, I'm from a belief system that if you do your work well, that means you are praying. The time that you're actually working, it's a form of a prayer. You're looking after other human beings, the families and the businesses. And Mehdi had the same thought process, and that's what he was doing. And he came back and he said, cutting down from 7 days to 6 days. The rest of us would be in a different ballgame, but no, that was Mehdi's, way of thinking. Now, Mehdi has 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter. The youngest is the daughter. She works for MetLife. Mehdi was close. He's got 9 grandchildren, 1 great-grandchild. So he loved his wife, Sigrid, but the thing is, it is part and parcel. The family accepted that this is the way Mehdi was, which is he loved people. Like he mentioned in the speech, that he went and saw somebody and he got paid for doing that. He said, I'm enjoying meeting people and I get paid for it. So how did he reconcile? I couldn't answer, except in only Mehdi could do it. So, and yet he found a way to gel the work as well as his beliefs, as well as family life together. So,
yeah.
And by the way, if I don't mind it, Sigrid had a message for all the people in the audience. She wanted them to know that Mehdi and Sigrid felt wonderful going around the world, literally meeting a lot of people, feeling the love. And she wanted to wish everybody nothing but the best in everything that they do. And she had a special message for Ted. Sigrid said one of the highlights for Mehdi and Sigrid was coming to Ireland, being in your home, and she wanted me to pass on how very special those moments were, and she still recalls it vividly.
That's very nice. Please thank her very much. We loved having her in the house. And I was telling somebody the other day that when Mehdi came to our house, there was a lovely bit of Galway crystal or Waterford glass that I gave to Mehdi as a present to thank him for everything. I don't think my wife has forgiven me for giving it away yet.
Ted, let's stay with you. And here, you wrote a book, Don't Be Afraid to Dream. It's a book you wrote. Tell us about it, as we are interested to hear about also the chapter devoted for Mehdi, because already you have a chapter in your book about Mehdi.
Yeah, I mean, it was devoted, I suppose, really, Naji, to the fantastic business meeting we had when we completed the business. And I remember meeting Mehdi the following year at MDRT, and I went to buy him a coffee or lunch and to thank him for doing the wonderful case to help me, to complete that case. And I mentioned that the client we did the first Mehdi plan with, he had high blood pressure. And Mehdi said to me, and how did you handle that? I said, I'm not sure what you mean. So he said, the fact that he had high blood pressure and that he was raised for blood pressure, was that an issue with him? And I said, it was a little bit, but I managed to get him to sign the completion of the form, the acceptance terms. So he said, I'll tell you now what you do in future, he said. He said, if you have somebody who has high blood pressure, don't go back to them in a negative way and saying, oh, you were rated for high blood pressure with a kind of a sad face and kind of almost giving him an excuse for not taking it. He said, what you have to do, he said, is go back to whoever the client was with high blood pressure and say, I have great news for you. Basically, the insurance company have offered their very best rates for somebody with high blood pressure. The medical must have been very good. Sign here. And basically, then there is no problems. And the other thing he says you can do, he said, is you can, if you have somebody who's been accepted at rated terms, go back to the insurance company and ask them if they will give more cover on the medical information that they have. And if they will, then go back and say, not only have they given you their best rates for somebody with high blood pressure, but because the medical was so good, they'll give you some more cover. And it actually transpired into a fantastic business idea for me, which I'll share with you now just for a couple of seconds. He said, if you are going through the difficulty of underwriting a large case, let's say for €1 million on somebody to cover inheritance tax or to cover goodwill or whatever it might be. He said, if you get acceptance terms, go back to the insurance company and say to the insurance company, on the medical that you have, are you prepared to offer more cover? And in fact, I went and I made an application for a lawyer in Cork about 10 years ago, and it was for €1 million worth of €1 million worth of life insurance cover. It was tax deductible. It was arranged on a kind of a pension term insurance here in Ireland, which is tax deductible. And we got the case underwritten, which took maybe about 5 or 6 weeks to do. And luckily he was given first class terms. And I kind of felt that this guy, this lawyer, he might need more cover as time went by. And again, it was an idea that I heard from Mehdi when he spoke at the LIA meeting in Dublin in Ireland. And I said, you know, as somebody gets older, the cost of cover becomes more and more expensive. So anyway, in this situation, the $1 million was accepted at first class terms. He asked the insurance company how much more would they give based on the information that they had. And they said they would do another $500,000. So that was wonderful. I went back to my client and I said, I have absolutely fantastic news for you. I said, the $1 million is acceptable at first class terms. And also because everything was so good, they have agreed to offer you another $500,000 on the same terms, first class. And this is something I said that you probably will need, maybe not today, but you will need it in a few years' time. And as you know, it'll be more expensive then. So he said, fine. He went ahead with both of them. To underwrite the $1 million, I'd say it took me 5 or 6 weeks. The $500,000 took 2 minutes. It was so simple and so wonderful. So Mehdi, he was everything that you say, but by goodness, he was also a very good thinker. And he was very astute in kind of solving problems and making a problem an opportunity. And that's what I suppose what I loved about him. And he was so nice with people. I remember I visited in the hotel and there was a lady working in the hotel and she had the Hoover out. She was sweeping up or whatever. And he went over to her, he says, can I give you a hand? Can I do that for you? And he wasn't joking. He would have actually taken over the Hoover and did it for her. That was the kind of person he was.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you. Fred, before we continue with you, we can play now the video. Okay. Yeah. We will see the video, Mehdi dancing on the stage.
Okay, good. Yeah. Can I give you a hand? Can I do that for you? And he wasn't joking. He would have actually taken over the Hoover and did it for her. That was the kind of person he was.
You want me to dance?
But that's lovely, lovely. Thank you.
We're very happy to
Fred, before we
They
continue with you,
created the foundation
play now
to
the
the
video.
name of that child.
Okay.
Încă ai
Yeah. We will see the video, Mehdi dancing on the stage.
And put
Okay,
this
good, yeah.
someone,
This-
one
can I
will
give
go
you a
ahead.
hand? Can I do that for you? And he didn't do that, wasn't joking. He could have actually taken over the whole Brendan. That was the kind of person he was.
Every single
You want me to
year.
dance?
But that's lovely, lovely. The audience was seeing the video. So and already finished. Freddie, we continue with you, please. You need to unmute yourself.
Yes, okay. You know, Tony, I'm back to you for a second. I'm sure everybody in the audience wants to pick your brain. And what advice would you give to the other agents who want to succeed like Mehdi did and want to be the top in their company? You know, especially with all the difficult circumstances that we're all facing today.
Well, I'll take issue with one thing. I'm with Joe. In times of difficulty, there is always opportunity. And there are agents that I work with, as you know, Fred, in this country who are telling me, I'm having my best year, I've just had my best month, I've just written the biggest case I've ever written. I'm having to work less hard because I don't have to travel as clients. We're meeting clients on Zoom. I'm getting referrals on Zoom. I'm making sales presentations on Zoom. The technology today, and I know, as you know, I am no technology guy. But the technology today, if we just learn how to use it to help us make sales, it's so much easier today. And those who work hard today will do so and develop a momentum to work through this time of change. And we'll keep going at that momentum, at that pace when we come through this, that will stand them in good stead. And none of you, except maybe Ted, are old enough to remember. I started in 1969. I started my own firm in 1973, and the stock market promptly fell in the UK by 74%. So I had to work at a pace that would allow for that and still produce and generate modest success. But as the market picked up and it is picked up again, I was still working at the same pace. And that made me extremely successful. So firstly, I think I agree with what Joe said. This is not a time of what was the expression you used? Difficulty. This is a time of opportunity. And we should always have that kind of mindset. Where is the opportunity for me? Now, I know that things are tough, particularly in the Lebanon. But nevertheless, we work through this, the success that will follow will be enormous. Now, what was your question? Because at my age, I have trouble remembering the questions. So what was your question, Fred?
I'll remind you by asking Joe the same question, because Joe, I want to pick your brain on that as well. I mean, advice that you to the agents who succeed in a big way as well.
Okay, now do you want him to answer, or do you want me to answer to the question?
Both of you.
Okay, Tony, we'll start with you and then we'll go to Joe.
Okay, right. What do you have to do to succeed? It's very simple. You create an image of what it is you want to do. What is your long-term goal? What is your dream? And this becomes, if you like, your mantra. This becomes something to hang on to. Then you break it down. What do I have to do each year, each month, each week, each day? What do I have to do tomorrow that if I repeat it the day after, the day after, the day after, will bring my dreams to reality? That's the first thing. You got to have an image of what success means to you, because that's the magnet that will draw you towards it. What do you want to achieve for yourself, for your family, from this business? Now, it'll change over the years as you become more successful. But you've got to start with something, a good reason to go to work in the morning. Then you've got to figure out what going to work tomorrow means. What do I have to do tomorrow that if I repeat it day after day, will make it happen. You got to believe in yourself. That's all you've got to do. You know, Mehdi would be telling you the same things. Life was simple, not complicated. We confuse the two. We confuse easy and simple. They're not the same. This is not an easy business, but it is a simple business. And that's what Mehdi would be telling us if he was here now. What we have to do is simple. We just have to know why we want to achieve, what we want to achieve, and what we have to do tomorrow that will make that achievement happen. And then it's just the discipline of doing it every day. This is not a complex business. You know what's hard about this business? Making ourselves get out of bed every morning and do what has to be done. That's the bit that's difficult. And if people will do that, and that's why it's so important to have this image of what it is we want to achieve, because it's hard to remember. Going to work tomorrow is the essential step in achieving the long-term success, all the wealth, the success we want to achieve. The people that you're talking to here are all people who've achieved great success. They've achieved great success not by doing some great thing, but by getting out of tomorrow and doing what has to be done, and then repeating it the following day and the following day. It's there for however many people are listening into us. What we have achieved, what Mehdi achieved, can be achieved by anybody if we just have the discipline to do what has to be done every day. Okay, Joe.
Yeah.
I got to echo what you said. I mean, it's you know, it's like the Nike thing, just do it, you know. And that's why from Mehdi, I learned the idea that it's prospecting and everything else. That's really the core issue there. If you're not in front of people, it doesn't matter what you do, what you study, or what you become. And so I think that's there. I also talked about what I learned from him was gratitude. And gratitude, and I hope people listening is not saying, oh, this sounds like a up with people story. It's not. It's really your attitude towards it. Because if you really look at it, and people say, well, you heard Mehdi talk about it, right? I'm in the big city, there's too much competition. I'm in the small city, there's no money. There's always something that, you know, that pops up with that. Optimism is the only worldview that actually jives with historical facts. All right, so just take a lead at this, all right? When my mother was born in 1912, her life expectancy was in the 50s. My sister Peggy was born in 1943. Her life expectancy is in the 60s. My daughter Sarah was born in 1983. Her life expectancy is in the mid 80s. In my family's lifetime, life expectancy went up like about 35 years, you know. If people are on their phone, their iPhone right now, okay, that phone has more computing power in it than the world had in 1951 when I was born, has more computing power than the first moonshot when the LEM landed on the moon, has more computing power than that. We have to begin to look at the vaccinations, right? This vaccine got created in 9-10 months instead of 5 years. We live in an age of miracles, and I'm not trying to be up with people. I'm just trying to get across the reality of it. And you have to be able to bathe in some of that when you get back to the idea of doing, look, I'm doing it today. I dial and smile too. I speak for a living. So, you know, I got people who don't call me back. I got people who aren't necessarily nice, you know, but I do this thing, a daily contact commitment, and I have to call X number of people a day. So I do that. It sucks, but you know what? I'm in control of it. I did it. Everything else, you don't control anything, okay? You don't control the stock market. You don't control the weather. You don't control any of that stuff. The only thing that you control is your effort. And that's something that I think is crucial. I think that's what he said. And so he had that knowledge. So does that mean sometimes I don't get down or whatever? Sure. But I mean, that's some of the stuff. And you know what? If you're young and you're hearing this might bloom in your head like 10 years from now. But I'm telling you, it's just like what Tony said. Simple and easy, or simple and hard are different. You know, it's simple, but it's hard. But you got to really begin to sit back and begin to think about what your mental attitude is. And it's just completely optimistic. Oh, I would tell you now with this virus, right? Limmer did a study. This is in the United States. I'm sure it's worldwide, right? 29% of the US population is thinking about buying life insurance now. That's 75 million people. We got something new. You know what it's called? it's called demand, all right? And we're walking around with our heads down, you know? It's just a question of the game of large numbers, of being able to continually go out and ask people to see it. And it'll happen. And I think this is a great environment.
Yeah, I love
Joe,
it. Go ahead,
you know,
Tony, go ahead.
Yeah. I read something the other day that over the last 12 months, when people have not been shopping, there is 150 billion pounds. That's about 200 billion of your dollars, Joe, that has not been spent, that is sitting in banks in the UK now, and we have a population of 60 million compared to your 300 million, right? 150 billion, 200 billion dollars, right? Waiting for somebody to go out there and actually say, hey, we should take that out of the bank and we should put it somewhere that will do you more good than that. So whether it's life insurance, whether it's money, you're absolutely right, Joe. Times of crisis create fantastic opportunity.
Right, I agree.
And we're living in that today.
Right.
At the same time, Freddie, sorry, you
go ahead, Mehdi. Go ahead.
Sorry, because always Mehdi, he mentioned and he was saying all the time, even the ace salesman, he wakes up every morning unemployed. So Alfonso, what you can say for us about this point?
Well, Mehdi was right as usual. You know, he came from a background, for example, a lot of people might not realize he was an engineer. He had a bachelor's of engineering. He wanted to study for his master's in engineering, but unfortunately, it was for him no other option but to start working. So he used to walk outside his home in the street, trying to memorize English terminology so he could see people and actually speak. You know, and one of the things, there was a funny story, if I could share that. When he was an agent, he went to see a prim and proper lady in Manhattan, and one of the questions was, have you ever had bronchitis? Mehdi's English was legendary, as you know, so he couldn't say bronchitis, so he said, do you have S-H-I-T? And the lady said, pardon me? He said, do you have S-H-I-D? And she says, no. she was embarrassed. She didn't know. She was shocked. And thank God she went on to become a client, and he could not say bronchitis. So he had to learn the hard way. So yes, this world has got challenges, but the challenges are not new. The virus perhaps is in a newer format, what happened from 1918. But in a way, Mehdi would say that we were made for times like this. Our business was made for times like this, that we are delivering love letters, we're delivering checks to people, both in illness benefits as well as death benefit. Those are, in fact, we are couriers or postmen, postwomen, delivering love letters with the claims we pay on all products that we actually sell. So it is an opportunity. You know, my school of thought is that the world is only made up of two kinds of people: those that are clients and those that are waiting to become clients. Our job is to simply see, call, Zoom, do whatever format that is available to you in order to show them the benefits of having rather than not having. Because realistically, Naji, you're not my competition. Realistically, illness and death are competition. Our job is simply to see our clients before our competition does. So that's what we have to do. And these are times of opportunity, again, obstacles.
Thank you, Alfonso. Freddie, you want to ask something? And also, we still have one video to play before we go to the last questions for all our speakers. And we close with a very special words from Mehdi. Freddie, you want to ask the question, or we go with for the video? Can you unmute yourself?
I just want to ask the speakers, I mean, if they feel that we've left anything out here that needs to be addressed. Joe, do you believe we've addressed what needs to be addressed?
Yeah, I think you have. I think you touched on all of it. Yes.
You know, I just remembered a couple of things that were sitting on my bookshelf. I was sitting here looking at the spines of. Now I don't collect books by life insurance agents. Yeah, I've read Ted's book. And Joe, have you written a book yet? If you have, okay. I've read Joe's book. Okay, if I've read your books, they're sitting in the office, because that's where, if people come to see me in the office, if they want to pick up a book, read it, borrow it, they can do. The only insurance books that I have at home, one written by a guy called Woody Woodson, who was great. But Woody Woodson, he was great in the 50s and 60s and early 70s. That's when I met him. I have that book, and I have Mehdi's books here. And Mehdi met my daughters. I brought Mehdi to speak in the UK, as you did in Ireland, Ted. But when I was president of MDRT in 2001, my family were there, which the president's allowed to have there. And Mehdi met my daughters, and every time I'd communicate with Mehdi, he would always, when he replied, it would always be, P.S., give my best to Eve and to your daughters. He never forgot. He remembered their names. One of these books is actually, I've just noticed, to Miriam. May you always enjoy the best of health and happiness, Mehdi, June in 2001, the year that I was president. So he remembered people's names. He cared about people. So we've all said everything. The guy was an exceptional guy. You know what I hope, or maybe I should save this for last. If I would hope that when I'm gone, people will think as highly of me as I think of Mehdi.
Wow.
Nice.
Alfonso, would you say we've covered everything?
I believe we have. I believe we have covered everything. As far as I wish for the rest of the audience listening, as well as all of us in the panel, is this gentleman left a legacy, and it shall long live all of us, simply based on, it outlived all of us, I should say. It's based on him speaking from his heart. He's left that gift, and we carry that on in different ways to be better people. I certainly remember for the rest of my life, until the day I die, his humility, his giving back. I think that is the greatest gift. And Tony mentioned it perfectly, saying that he inspired him to become a better human being. That's what Mehdi did for all of us. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for Alfonso for being here. And last but not least, Ted, would you say that we've covered everything of me?
Yeah, his influence on my business life was enormous. From the first time I heard him speak, I did one of the Mehdi plans. I arranged it in my company's name on my life. And when with profits constantly started to disappear and critical illness insurance came into Ireland, what I used to do then was do the same type of Mehdi plan, except it was serious illness on the key person in the company with a cash fund building up. And Mehdi used to always say, if something is good and you're selling something or trying to arrange something with somebody, make sure you have one arranged on your own life first, because that's the first thing they'll ask you. Have you got one of those yourself? And you better have. And in my case, I had a substantial serious illness policy affected by the company. And I remember when we went through the financial crisis in 2007, our accountant was looking at the cost of it. He said, we want to stop that policy. It's too expensive. And I was coming to the age of 60 at this time. And I said, it's probably not the right time to stop it. We can probably certainly take the cash value out of the policy and help the bank situation, which we did. But anyway, I agreed with the board, or kind of persuaded the board to keep the policy in force on my life. And 2 years later, in 2009, this was 2007, I took the cash. 2009, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and the claim was paid. And so, can I thank that to Mehdi, that the cover was in place in my life? Well, we can. And that money came into the company. I was able to put some of it into my pension fund and some of it into my partner's pension fund. And Eamon, my son, was basically starting to take over the running of the business, and we were able to use that money to buy back the shares from another director so that I could pass those shares to Eamon. So a phenomenal effect that started in, basically in 1983, when Mehdi came to Ireland, and the influence is still there. And the policies I've wrote, I normally try and get the business one because the business check is higher, it's easier. A lot of the big cases I did were with companies, and that's certainly easier to get a nice case when the company can pay the check rather than the individual. The individual has very little money left at the end of every year. The company, it's only a very small percentage on the turnover. Yeah, I think you've done a wonderful job. For me, it's been fascinating. Listening to all of those lovely people, it's been wonderful. So well done to all.
Thank you so much for being here. Naji, you want to go ahead and close?
Yeah, I want to ask each and every one of you, if now Mehdi, he's sitting in front of us, what will you say to him in one sentence?
Joe, go ahead.
For me, to be the greatest gift that he has given all of us.
Tony?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, he planted the seeds for things that I heard but didn't grasp until I got older, and made me better for it. And I hope that in some small way I can help to say those things to others so that it doesn't just stop with Mehdi being gone.
Excellent. Tony?
If Mehdi were back sitting in front of us today, I'd say, welcome back. I'd say, tell me your secret. I would say thank you for inspiring me, being a mentor for me, having faith in me, that I hope you are proud of what you saw in me and what I'm trying to do, not in so much in Mehdi's name, I suppose, in my own name, but in carrying on that MDRT tradition of trying to help others achieve what I've achieved, what Mehdi achieved, what others achieved before Mehdi, and what others will achieve, what Naji and Fred and Alfonso, I think you're younger than I am. Incidentally, I learned something interesting today, Joe, that you were born in 1951. I thought you were older than that. Well, I'm certainly older than that.
I just look like hell, that's all. The Ted that your son is achieving, and hopefully they will continue to be willing. The next generation will be willing to spread the word that, as Mehdi put it, nothing is impossible and everything is possible because it is, and that's, I think, the way that I would speak to Mehdi if you were here today.
Freddie, anything to add before we go to the close of the session?
Yeah, look, he has changed my life. The visit of him and Seagrom to Ireland was of fundamental importance to me and to many of my clients and to my family. Yeah, thank you, Mehdi. It's been fantastic. Well done. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mehdi. And Joe, you're looking great, my friend. Go ahead, Naji.
Yeah, I want to thank every one of you really for this great session in the memory of the greatest Mehdi Fakharzadeh. Thank you, Tony Gordon, the icon of the life insurance, one of the icon of the life insurance, my mentor, Tony Gordon. My friend, top man, Joe Jordan, Ted Wire, thank you so much. And we can feel you now, Ted, really, we can feel you now, what you are feeling now about Mehdi. And Alfonso, really thank you for all the effort and for all the job. And because of you also, you were one of the people you were so passionate about this session. And sure, thank you for every one of you guys. And Freddie, thank you so much for being with us all the time, brother.
Thank you, Nancy.
And the last word is for Mehdi Fakharzadeh. Let's go. And thank you, everyone.
It is not surviving. We have the best job that God has created. Not God has created. The human being has created. I always say in my speeches to the audience, it is beautiful business. It's fantastic business. We don't have any inventory. We don't have any machinery. We don't have any capital. We don't have any. The only thing that we have, we talk. We talk. The more that you talk, the more money that you make. No, when you say crisis, it is not, absolutely, I don't believe in it. It is one of the best, not one of the best job. I'm so much in love with it.
Everyone, thank you. And I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much. See you soon in another session. And sure, everyone who's listening to us, he was in this session. Be ready for the big event, a Bliss conference event on November 4, 5, 6. And most of the speakers, you will see it physically and virtually in Lebanon and all around the world. Thank you so much. God bless you. God bless MDRT. God bless all the speakers that they are with us. God bless the soul of Mehdi Fakharzadeh. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Great to be with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Seeing all of you.
I'm told that I'm highest paid man with Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. They say that I make more money than the president of the company. Even if it is a lie, it is a good feeling. Isn't that true? For a man like me, who doesn't know any English, who doesn't know anybody, will be in such a status? Making that kind of money, being in that position, I can assure you, it is not easy. No matter how you slice it, you've got to work and work and work. Nothing can replace the work. As a matter of fact, in Iran, we say, "Bad avarde ra bad mibarad." They think that you get easy. It goes out of your hand easily. But when you work for it, then you will appreciate it. Also, we say, "Kar niku kardan ast, por kardan ast," which means practice makes it perfect. When you do practice on everything, it makes you perfect to do it. Repeat. We also say, "Tark adat mujab maraz ast," which means when you get used, when you are in a habit of doing something, if you don't do it, you will get sick. I'm positively sure that you will agree with me that when we were a kid, we never wanted to take a bath or brush our teeth. They made us to do so. But right now, it is a habit for us. It is a habit. If we don't do it, we get sick. Isn't that true? Isn't that true about our business? Isn't that the way that we should do the business? The way that actually we look, our job is to see people. I always say the best job is created. This is our job. We have just to go and talk to people and make money. Isn't that beautiful? I always say that if you ask my family, what is Mehdi's hobby? They say to be with people because I love people. Now I go to one man, I spend 1 or 2 hours with him. I enjoy myself. I have a happy life. I have a great time. And in the meantime, I made $5,000 at 2 bad. Is it bad? I was in a platform some time ago with a gentleman by the name of Frank Satali. He's from Mutual of New York. He was telling me that during the Depression, he got married. He didn't have any job. He looked all over. He was willing to work for $40, $50 a week. He couldn't find anything. Finally, some of his friends told him, why don't you go to insurance business? He said, the nearest office that I could find was a Mutual of New York. He went there, and the manager interviewed him. And evidently, he liked him. He said, young man, I'm going to make an agreement with you, whereby if every single day you go to the field and you talk to 10 people and you bring 10 no's to me, I will give you $50 that day too. He said, what? What? You mean that if I go to the field and talk to 10 prospects and they tell me no, you are going to give me $50 for that day? He said, yes. He said, could I work Saturday and Sundays? Frank said that he was so enthused, he was so excited, he was so pleased. He went home, and the following day he couldn't sleep at night. Early morning he got up and he went to the field. To the first man he got, he said that I just joined Mutual of New York and I want to talk to you about insurance. He said, I just got heart attack, I'm uninsurable. He said, that's great, that's wonderful. He went to the second one. The man said, you are too late. I just bought $100,000 insurance last week. He went to the third one. He said, for heaven's sake, I have insurance up to here. I'm worth more dead than being alive. But he was not upset. He was not happy. He was very happy because he's coming closer to the $50. Son of a gun, the sixth one, he said, yes. Frank said that I never made that $50.
We can't get enough from Mehdi. The only thing I regret today is that Mehdi is not with us today. God bless you all. God bless your soul. And thank you, Mehdi, for keep inspiring us. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I just want to tell you, nothing is impossible. That there are many philosophies that I don't believe in. One of them is failure. I don't believe in failure. But But to myself, I said, God bless the one who give an advice. I just want to tell you, nothing is impossible. That there are many philosophies that I don't believe in. One of them is failure. I don't believe in failure. But to myself, I said, God bless the one who give an advice.